The advanced tech of the Roman army. For over 500 years, the Roman army was virtually unstoppable. They conquered an empire, stretching from Britain to the Middle East, defeating enemies with superior numbers, better weapons, and home field advantage. Their secret wasn't just courage or discipline, it was technology so advanced that some of it wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. Welcome to Chapters in History. Today we're revealing the engineering marvels, tactical innovations, and psychological weapons that made Rome's legions the most feared fighting force in ancient history. If you love discovering how technology changed the world, smash that subscribe button. Let's march into the arsenal of Rome. When we think of ancient armies, we often imagine primitive weapons and chaotic battles. But the Roman military was a sophisticated machine, built on innovation, standardization, and relentless improvement. They didn't just fight wars, they engineered victory. Roman soldiers carried equipment that seems unremarkable until you understand the technology behind it. Their armor was lighter, but more protective than their enemies. Their weapons were designed for efficiency in formation fighting. Their fortifications could be built in hours, and their siege equipment could breach walls that had stood for centuries. But the real genius of Roman military technology wasn't individual weapons. It was the system. The Romans created the first truly professional army in Western history, with standardized equipment, organized supply chains, military medicine, and engineering corps that could build bridges, roads, and fortresses anywhere in the known world. Today, we're going to explore the specific technologies that gave Rome its edge, from the armor that saved countless lives to the siege engines that terrorized their enemies, and the organizational innovations that modern militaries still use today, the gladius. Let's start with the weapon that became synonymous with Roman power, the gladius. This short sword, typically between 18 and 24 inches long, doesn't look impressive compared to the long slashing swords used by Celtic or Germanic warriors. But the gladius represented a revolutionary understanding of battlefield mechanics. The Romans adopted the gladius after encountering it during their wars in Hispania, modern-day Spain. They recognized that in the tight formations of ancient warfare, a short stabbing sword was far more effective than a long slashing weapon. A soldier in a packed formation doesn't have room to swing a long blade, but he can thrust a gladius forward with devastating efficiency. The metallurgy was equally sophisticated. Roman blacksmiths created blades using a technique that combined different grades of steel, harder steel for the cutting edges, and more flexible steel for the core. This prevented the blade from shattering on impact while maintaining a razor-sharp edge. The quality control was so consistent that gladii found across the empire, from Britain to Syria, show remarkably similar construction. The design also considered ergonomics and balance. The handle was shaped to fit comfortably in the hand during prolonged combat, and the weight distribution allowed for quick, repeated stabbing motions without excessive fatigue. Roman soldiers trained extensively with weighted wooden swords that were heavier than their actual weapons, so when they carried the real gladius into battle, it felt light and quick. But the gladius was just one part of an integrated weapon system. Romans also carried the pugio, a dagger for close combat, and most importantly, the pilum. The pilum was Rome's secret weapon, and it demonstrates Roman engineering brilliance. This javelin wasn't designed primarily to kill, it was designed to disable enemy shields and break formations. The pilum consisted of a wooden shaft topped with a long iron shank ending in a pyramidal point. The genius was in the construction of that iron shank. Romans made it from softer iron that would bend on impact. When a pilum struck an enemy's shield, the soft iron shank would bend under its own weight, making the javelin impossible to remove quickly and rendering the shield too unwieldy to use. This forced enemy warriors to drop their shields right before contact with Roman infantry, exactly when they needed protection most. Even if the pilum missed the shield and stuck in the ground, the bent shank made it useless to throw back at Roman lines. Some versions of the pilum used an even more sophisticated system, a wooden peg holding the shank to the shaft. On impact, this peg would break, causing the iron head to swing down and drag along the ground, again preventing reuse. Roman legionaries typically carried two pillar. They would throw the first volley at about 30 feet, creating chaos in enemy ranks as warriors struggled with disabled shields. The second volley came at closer range, just before melee combat began. This 1-2 punch of ranged attack followed by swordwork was devastatingly effective. Lorica segmentata. The iconic image of a Roman soldier includes the lorica segmentata, the segmented plate armor that looks remarkably modern. This armor represents advanced metallurgy, ergonomic design, and mass production techniques that wouldn't be seen again until the Industrial Revolution. The lorica segmentata consisted of iron strips formed into curved sections, fastened to internal leather straps, and held together by brass fittings and buckles. This design provided several crucial advantages over the chainmail used by Rome's enemies. First, it was surprisingly light. A full set weighed about 20 pounds, compared to 25 to 30 pounds for equivalent chainmail protection. This weight saving meant Roman soldiers could march further and fight longer without exhaustion. Second, the segmented design distributed weight across the shoulders and torso more effectively than chainmail, which hangs from the shoulders. Roman soldiers could wear their armor for extended periods with less fatigue. Third, and most importantly, it provided superior protection against the slashing and cutting attacks common in ancient warfare. The curved iron plates deflected blows away from the body, and the overlapping segments meant there were no gaps or weak points. Arrows and sword strikes that would penetrate chainmail often glanced off the hardened iron plates. The manufacturing process reveals Roman organizational genius. Archaeological evidence shows that armor was mass-produced in workshops, with standardized sizes and interchangeable parts. If a section of armor was damaged in battle, it could be replaced rather than requiring an entirely new set. This modularity made repair and maintenance far more efficient. The armor also featured clever details: hinges at the shoulder for freedom of movement, quick-release buckles for emergency removal, and ventilation gaps to prevent overheating. Every aspect was engineered for the practical realities of combat. Military engineering. Roman military technology extended far beyond personal weapons and armor. The Roman army was fundamentally an engineering force that happened to fight battles. Every legion included specialized engineers, architects, and craftsmen who could transform a landscape to Rome's advantage. The most famous example is the marching camp. At the end of each day's march, Roman legions would construct a fortified camp complete with ditches, earthwork walls, watchtowers, and organized internal streets. This wasn't a simple campsite. It was a temporary fortress built to a standardized design that every soldier knew by heart. The process was remarkably efficient. Soldiers would dig a ditch around the camp perimeter, piling the excavated earth into a rampart topped with a palisade of sharpened wooden stakes that each soldier carried. Within hours, thousands of soldiers would be protected by fortifications that would take an enemy considerable time and casualties to assault. This technology provided enormous strategic advantages. Roman armies could camp safely in hostile territory, advance through any terrain, and establish secure supply bases. The psychological impact on enemies was significant. Watching a Roman legion transform open ground into a fortress in an afternoon demonstrated their organizational superiority. But Roman military engineering went much further. They built siege towers that could reach over city walls, battering rams protected by mobile shelters called testudos or tortoises, and ballistae, essentially giant crossbows that could hurl iron-tipped bolts or stone projectiles with devastating accuracy. The ballista technology deserves special attention. These torsion-powered artillery pieces used tightly wound bundles of sinew or hair to generate enormous power. The largest versions could throw a 60-pound stone over 500 yards with enough force to smash through walls. Romans standardized ballista construction with precise measurements for the springs based on the weight of projectile, creating predictable and reliable artillery. Perhaps most impressive were the Roman roads and bridges built by military engineers. These weren't temporary structures, they were permanent infrastructure designed to last centuries. The road system, much of it built by legionary engineers, stretched over 250,000 miles at the empire's peak, enabling rapid movement of troops and supplies across vast distances. Siege warfare. Dominance. When it came to siege warfare, Roman engineering reached its peak. The Siege of Masada, in 73 to 74 AD, demonstrates Roman determination and technical capability. Facing a fortress on a plateau 1,300 feet high, the Romans built a massive siege ramp, essentially constructing an artificial mountain to reach the walls. This ramp still exists today, a testament to Roman engineering ambition. During Julius Caesar's siege of Alesia in 52 BC, his legions built an 11-mile circumvallation wall to surround the Gallic fortress, then built an outer 13-mile wall to protect against the relief army. These fortifications included trenches, palisades, watchtowers, and even traps with sharpened stakes. The Romans essentially built two complete fortification systems, totaling 24 miles of walls, in less than a month. Roman siege towers were marvels of engineering. These multi-story mobile structures, sometimes over 100 feet tall, could be wheeled up to enemy walls, providing a platform for attacking defenders at wall height. They were covered in wet hides to resist fire arrows, and housed battering rams on the lower levels, while archers and soldiers occupied the upper floors. The testudo formation and mobile siege shelters showed Roman understanding of combined arms tactics. Soldiers could advance under a roof of interlocked shields, while engineers worked to undermine walls or position siege equipment, protected from arrows and projectiles. Romans also pioneered military mining and countermining. They would dig tunnels under enemy fortifications, shore them up with wooden supports, then set fire to the supports, causing the tunnel to collapse and taking down the wall above. Enemy defenders would dig their own counter-tunnels, leading to underground battles in the darkness. Organization and logistics. The most advanced Roman military technology wasn't a weapon, it was organization itself. The Romans created systems for supply, medical care, training, and command that transformed warfare from chaotic tribal clashes into a precise science. The legion's internal structure was brilliantly designed. The basic unit was the contubarium, 8 men who shared a tent and fought together, creating bonds of loyalty and mutual protection. 10 contubaria formed a century of 80 men under a centurion. 6 centuries formed the cohort, and 10 cohorts formed a legion of approximately 5,000 men. This hierarchical structure meant orders could be transmitted quickly, and units could be coordinated with precision. Each level of command had clear responsibilities and could operate independently if needed. The Roman supply system was equally sophisticated. Legions were followed by enormous baggage trains carrying food, weapons, tools, and equipment. The Romans established supply depots along campaign routes and developed procedures for requisitioning local supplies while keeping detailed accounts. Military medicine was centuries ahead of its time. Roman military physicians, called medici, performed surgeries, treated wounds, and understood the importance of hygiene in preventing disease. Archaeological excavations of Roman military hospitals show sophisticated facilities with separate wards, surgical suites, and recovery areas. Training was standardized across the empire. Roman recruits underwent months of intensive training, with wooden swords and wicker shields, heavier than their real equipment. They learned to march in formation, build fortifications, swim in full armor, and fight as a unit rather than individuals. Final chapter. The Roman army's dominance wasn't built on a single wonder weapon. It was built on a systematic approach to warfare that combined advanced equipment, superior engineering, brilliant logistics, and relentless training into an integrated system that was greater than the sum of its parts. Modern militaries still use concepts the Romans pioneered: standardized equipment and training, military engineering core, hierarchical command structures, and the understanding that logistics wins wars as much as battlefield tactics. The fall of Rome meant many of these technologies and organizational methods were lost for centuries. Medieval European armies wouldn't match Roman sophistication for over 1,000 years. In many ways, we're still rediscovering and applying Roman military innovations. The lesson of Roman military technology is clear. True advancement comes not just from better tools, but from better systems. The Romans understood that a well-organized army with good equipment will always defeat a disorganized force with excellent equipment. What Roman military innovation impresses you most? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Chapters in History for more deep dives into the technologies that changed the world. Next week, we're exploring Viking longships, the advanced naval technology that terrorized Europe for 3 centuries. Until then, remember, the mightiest empires aren't just built on swords, they're built on systems.